Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. At the height of grunge's mainstream popularity, Stone Temple Pilots sought to transcend and expand on the perfected formula, adding in elements of psychedelia, blues and classic rock to bridge the gap from grunge to post-grunge. Their second album, Purple, focused on higher production value, a more melodic approach and a groove-oriented sound to elevate grunge to the next level of mainstream appeal and widespread accessibility. Joining me to discuss this album is my co-host Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, man, and you?
Good, yeah, very well, thank you. All good here. Another day, another week, another podcast.
Exactly.
We've been on fire because, as listeners and viewers, I hope you've noticed that we've actually been putting them out once a week now. We made the switch. We just thought it's about time. Just get on it, stick a date in the week, and just get them out. And it's been great, man. I just feel we've constantly had this cycle of new great albums to listen to and to check out that are just a bit different to what we're normally used to, isn't it?
Well, for me, it's great because it forces me to listen to stuff. There's not a set list. Normally, I'm listening to bands' repertoire instead of stuff that I want to listen to, and everything we talk about here is either something that I like or you like.
Yeah,
and it's good. It's good to just sit down and listen without having to learn songs.
Yeah, have a little break. Exactly. Cool. Right. Well, I'll fire off some of the quick album information. So, Purple by Stone Temple Pilots was released 7th of June 1994. Now, the album as a whole was kind of recorded in March of 1994, but two songs were recorded the year before. They were Big Empty and Loungefly. The studio it was recorded at was Southern Tracks in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, those two that were recorded earlier were done in different studios. And the genre, again, another interesting one. Grunge, hard rock, alt rock, psychedelic rock, even alt metal, I've read. So we can have a discussion about that. The length
You're the specialist.
Well, we'll see. The length of the album is just under 47 minutes, and it was released on the Atlantic label and produced by Brendan O'Brien. So, before we kick off, because I think Felipe chose this album, so he's going to lead this episode. That's my question. Why did you choose the album?
Because of a song, because of the hit single of the album, Interstate Love Song.
You know it, or you played it, or you had to learn it? Or...
I just love that song. I think it's such a brilliant piece of music.
I have to share with you that I've never heard any Stone Temple Pilots song until this week.
Wow. Well,
even the famous one.
When we've been to Download Festival,
yeah.
They've played at that festival. You probably were not there at that stage at that time.
I was probably listening to some death metal band whilst you were there.
Exactly. So I'm going to check those guys out. Obviously, that was like more recent. So with the new singer who did a phenomenal job, and and I just realized at that gig how good they were. I was like, oh my God, I need to check some of their songs out because I knew the classics. I knew a couple of songs from Core and a couple of songs from this album, and I was expecting to see them playing those songs. And then everything they played was just like so well executed, so well played, and there's a consistency in quality as well. So I thought, well, I need to check those guys out. So maybe the first album is kind of an obvious choice. Because it's more grunge, it's more like it does reflect more the sound of the 90s.
Yeah.
And this album, I think, is just more unique. It's got a sound of its own.
But there's reasons for that.
That's why I chose this one.
Yeah, but there's reasons for that. And actually what it does is actually plays an important part in rock music history, which we're going to get into. So the members of Stone Temple Pilots, you've got Robert DeLeo and his brother Dean DeLeo. And then you have Jeff. Well, Jeff Gutt is the lead vocalist now because Scott Weiland passed away. Yeah. But then you have Eric Kretz on drums. And obviously the singer is the renowned, famous Scott Weiland, or Wayland, however you want to say it. So that's about the band and the album, a bit of detail. So should we kick off with some background stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Right. Do you want to crack on?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is they are, so we've got to talk about the first album quickly. It was released in September 1992. So as you said, they spent another year working on, like in and out working on Purple. And basically, we're going to talk about how the recording happened. But so they released the first one in 1992, and it peaked at number 3 on the Billboard albums chart. It's pretty good, right?
Yeah, for a debut album
amount
as well.
of bands you had at the time releasing great albums.
Yeah.
But it was like hated by critics. So
Oh,
the media
really?
didn't like them. They didn't like them. They thought they were just like a copy of everything that was going on at the time. Maybe they
Interesting.
were a little
Okay.
bit. Doesn't mean they were not doing it well.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
then they started. You could compare them to the other bands. That's something we're going to talk about later as well.
Yeah.
But they started touring like and getting bigger. And with time, like the songs were starting to play more on the radio. So Plush was a big hit. Creep was a big hit. And they're touring with
Can you
Rage
pause one
Against the
second?
Machine.
Just the
Yeah.
normal terms and conditions,
Yes.
guys. Anyone who's listening or watching to this episode, any song we mention is in a dedicated playlist in the show notes. So you're going to go down, scroll down if you're on YouTube or on your Spotify and your Apple and your Amazon. In the show notes, it will say episode playlist, and it contains the full album that we're talking about and any songs that Felipe's mentioned. So what did you say they were? Plush, and there was one more.
And Creep.
Plush and Creep by Stone Temple Pilots. So they'll all be in the playlist.
From the album Core.
That's fine. They'll all be in the playlist, and any other song we mentioned today will be in there, so you can listen along with the episode. Felipe.
Yeah, and if you don't have the time to listen to the whole of the first album, listen to those 2 songs and maybe a couple of more. They're really good songs. Yep. So they started to be the support act for bands like Rage Against the Machine and Megadeth. So
wow,
which shows how there's different styles there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which shows that they can play with they can share the stage or share the bill with a variety of rock subgenres, if you want to call it like that. And that's where they were coming from. Now they had much more money and time to get into the second album. They were starting to get like recognized by people, so they kind of have some hit songs. They did like an acoustic set on MTV. So there's some of the songs I think you can find on Spotify or YouTube. Some of the acoustic versions of Plush is definitely there. And yeah, so they had a name at that point, but still for the mainstream media, they were not good enough.
Are you talking about the band name or the album name?
Well, the band had a name, had a reputation.
Oh, sorry.
Basically, what I'm saying is like they were.
Yeah, sorry, no, I get what you mean. I was a slow moment from me.
So they built a reputation by that time. So they were well known amongst rock fans, and the fans actually loved them, but the media didn't. So now we're going to move on into our next section, which is the production of the second album, because with all that background, so they had the money and the time to invest into the second album. They start investing on better stage production for the tours, so people would perceive them as a famous and as a big band. But even though they had the time, they didn't waste time at all recording the album, isn't it? They went to Brendan O'Brien's studio, which they said is just like behind his house or something like that, and they were staying in a place only about 3 miles away. So the producer insisted that they didn't get into the LA traffic to get to his place. Like, I need you guys to be in a accommodation like not far from the studio, because I like to work fast. And that is the key thing about the production of this album, is
why
is the efficiency of that producer.
Okay,
interesting. What's his name? Is it Dean DeLeo, one of the guitar player? Yeah. So he said that he was tracking like the last guitar track in the song, and the guy from the other band that was about to start another album, the studio was already there with his gear. So the producer like, gotta finish your guitar today. There's another album starting tomorrow or today, right? Like, it's like, just do it, get out of my way. And also, they said, the drummer said in the same interview that he was like more about getting things done quicker than getting to the technicalities of recording. So when they said, "Oh, which microphone do you have like in front of that guitar amp?" It was like, the nearest one. So I found the mic and put it there. I don't even know it, because like guitar players are really picky with sound. Got that one specific microphone in front, like a few inches, certain like the right amount of inches away from the speaker. It was like, I just put a mic in there. The first one I found. I don't care. Like, let's get this done. So so basically, what's the name? Robert DeLeo, isn't it? The bassist.
Brother, yeah.
So he's a phenomenal musician, by the way, with a lot of jazz and bossa nova background, which is interesting. He said with these words, the producer gave us the incentive to be creative quickly. Because you know how rock bands like to, I want to be creative and shit, take my time. It's like, yeah, you got to be creative now, get stuff done. And apparently,
that's hilarious, because my notes on production, I have brighter, polished, more eclectic. Later on, we're going to do a key part of this episode is establishing what Stone Temple Pilots did for grunge and how they progressed grunge on compared to the other contemporaries like Soundgarden, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam. So compared to their grunge contemporaries, it was more eclectic. Just a bit. It had a bit more life in it. And I'm just so surprised you're telling me this, that they were rushed, because I'd expect a rushed album. Well, let's not say rushed. I'd say an album that was made quickly and with urgency. I'd expect that to be more on the raw and dirty side of things. But to hear that they were rushed, but it still sounds bright and polished, that's very confusing.
Because I think the producer is doing that kind of how can I put it, a mass production of albums in his studio. He knows how to get a sound.
Yeah.
So to the point, the microphone doesn't matter. So he knows how to get a sound, and probably he had his own sound. It's like, come here, press record, done. But for that to happen, the band needs to know the direction they're taking. You can't rely on the producer to help you out if you don't have the songs really well arranged by the time you get into studio, which I believe they had, because they had it like a year and a half to go through those things whilst they were touring. And apparently they started doing some demos on the road and recording and arranging. Apparently the only thing that wasn't quite ready was some of the lyrics. So Scott Weiland was kind of struggling to finish some of the lyrics, and some of them were rushed. Some of them, which might explain why some of the lyrics don't make too much sense. Or at least to me, you listen to what is it going on about here? Maybe it's too personal. Maybe it's too American. Maybe it's just nonsense because he had to finish the lyrics. Even though he did an amazing job with the lyrics and melodies, of course. So 11 days to track all those songs. And you mentioned the one song or the two songs they'd done before. And the first one, Loungefly, was definitely the first song they recorded, and it has a complete different style from the first album. So if you listen to that, it starts with that that drum beat. It's completely different, right? So I think
it stands out.
So apparently what they said in several different interviews is they already knew the direction they wanted to take. So that's one of the reasons why the album didn't take that long to get recorded.
Because they had the feel, they had it all ready.
They had the feel,
I just want to say, in terms of the production, it is so crisp. It is wonderful, and this is the starting point, obviously, of our conversation as to how this sort of differed from the other contemporary grunge bands. The part that excels and typifies it for me is the lead guitar in the chorus of "Still Remains." Because there is this beautiful little melodic guitar sat in the chorus of it, but it's buried away. It's not obvious. Obviously, when the chorus comes in and you get everything together, it makes up that chorus. But it's only when you start listening and picking it out, you hear it in the back and you're like, oh yeah, that's there. I feel like little moments like that would have got lost in some Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains albums. Just that it's so, masterfully produced, really crisp and polished.
It's really great production. And also, I think, again, we're talking about working that quickly. You got to be good to do that. You got to be confident about how you produce a band to get that sound. Also, again, as I said, the band needs to know what they're doing. They need to be playing every single part and playing the transitions between verses and choruses really well. It's not something you can just jam in the studio and get done in one take. You need to know what you're doing. So they clearly wanted to, I don't know if I could say prove a point, but they really wanted to shove it in the face of the critics. Like, we have an album that doesn't sound like everything else that's been done in the 90s.
Well, that's absolutely, and in my notes before we moved on to production, I had in my background notes, there was pressure on the band to prove themselves because, as you said, they were in 1994, grunge was. It was almost at its peak. It was actually beginning to wane. It was beginning to start going downhill. So all of the key moments had been done. Nirvana's Nevermind, Soundgarden, all their key albums had been done. Stone Temple Pilots came along and were almost treated just as, oh, they're another band, you know, they're just copying what Nirvana did or Alice in Chains or something. So you're right, they had to prove it, and in doing so, they actually moved the genre on with this album.
Yep.
They played a crucial part in linking grunge to what we call now post-grunge, which is like Creed, Foo Fighters. You know, for listeners and viewers, we did an episode. What was Foo Fighters' first album called?
Was it The Color and the Shape? Not the
That's
first.
it.
That's the second.
No,
album.
sorry, yeah. But we did Foo Fighters, The Color and the Shape, maybe 10 episodes ago, which we said was one of the establishing post-grunge albums. So you've come from Nevermind, Bad Motorfinger to The Colour and the Shape, with Purple as a little stop off in the middle. So it played a massive part. But part of the reason it played a massive part is because of several iconic songs. Should we talk about them?
Yes, let's talk about the songs.
Let's talk about the most famous one, and the one that you said to me before we started recording is the reason that you sort of discovered this band, Interstate Love Song, which is their hit, isn't it? That is their song.
Yeah. I mean, I want you to say something about the song. Tell me about the bass line, please. No, I want you to tell me what you think about the bass line of this song. Like there's so much movement in the bass. It's just like he's not doing the same thing over and over. If you listen to like when it goes from verse to chorus, you're going to hear that. It doesn't sound like overplaying at all, but it's not basic, really.
No, what it is, and I'm going to get to this in our next section as well, is that a lot of this album, or a lot of moments in this album, unlike your typical grunge, is groove oriented. I hear lots of grooviness in the whole album. Sometimes there'll be a song that's actually an obvious grunge song, but there'll just be a little section where it grooves. And this is it, the Interstate Love Song, the chorus where it grooves. It's like, ban, ba 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 ban, ba da ban, ba 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 ban. But then in the verses, it's just smooth. One note held for a couple of bars or a couple of beats or something. And I think that transition, you know, with grunge, we're used to the bass providing a rhythmic backup for the guitar. And so often with bands like Soundgarden, you'd hear the bass mirroring what the guitar's doing. Or if the guitar is playing something a bit atmospheric or a little lead line in the chorus, the bass will be playing the original riff to sort of keep the foundation of that grunginess to it. But here, we hear the bass doing what I think 9 out of 10 people would say is the bass player's job, grooving along with the drummer, marrying the relationship between the harmonies of the guitar and the vocals and the rhythm of the drums, and it is beautiful. There's lots of great bass playing in here, but Interstate Love Song, brilliant.
No, it's brilliant. There's something about this song which I find really remarkable. It's like there's some elements throughout the album. There's some elements of like acoustic vibes and quieter sections. Still kind of groovy. You have a little bit of funk. You have a little bit of like heavy rock, and you have some moments where the slide guitar is the main thing.
Yeah,
this song has got
elements.
This song has got all of it in the first 8 bars.
Yeah, no, you're
absolutely right. It starts quiet, starts kind of acoustic, and builds up, and you have the slide guitar riff at the beginning, and it goes into a heavy or kind of hard rock riff. And then you have I would say, pop melody for the vocals, because it's not really rock the way he's singing. So it's basically a radio-friendly hit. There is this played by rock musicians without losing any elements of rock, blues, and acoustic rock.
I completely agree with you, and it's funny you say that because I listened to the song, and I knowing what I know, what I just said about where this album sits in rock history and what it was doing, I listened to it, and I don't think, this is one of the first examples of a post-grunge song or the first examples of a pop rock song. It still, for me, sits in the grunge department.
Yeah.
But there's just tiny little bits sprinkled on, like things as simple as vocal harmonies in the chorus, isn't it? Doesn't it? I think that. Obviously, I haven't listened to it in an hour, so I think there's like 1 or 2 words in the chorus, but the vocal harmonies only come in for 1 or 2 words.
Points, yeah.
So it's not like littering harmonies everywhere like a pop song may do.
They never overdo the harmonies in the whole album. Never.
Anything that falls outside of what you would call typical grunge in those days never overdoes it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
sprinkles little examples of it on. It's perfect, man. It's really good.
It's just brilliant. And one thing I want to say about the lyrics of that song, because like, okay, everyone, and I definitely don't want this episode to be about it. Everyone talks about, you know, the Scott Weiland's addiction that ultimately took his life, but he is talking about that in the song, but it's brilliant because the person that is like delivering those words is his wife. So basically, that's he wrote the lyrics under the point of view of his wife, telling him that she's tired of the lies, that he was promising to stop doing drugs. So how I imagine how painful it is to recognize that you're causing someone else a lot of pain,
Yeah.
and you can recognize that person's struggle with you, being in a relationship with you, and then you write the lyrics about how they feeling about you. That is a brilliant way to write a love song.
And again, another unusual element that you probably wouldn't have expected to hear. When you hear Nirvana lyrics, you often, you know, that's often coming straight from Kurt Cobain's heart himself. Yeah. I feel, again, you know, get in touch with us.
He's talking about himself.
Yeah, get in touch with us if I've got it wrong. If there is a specific song that Nirvana did that he wrote from the point of view of his wife or his mother, let me know. But in general...
Yeah. In general, most songwriters do that. This is, yeah. It's like, I'm talking about myself. Then when you say, okay, I'm not only talking about someone else's feelings, I'm talking about someone else's feelings, and that person is, you know, in a relationship with me, and I'm actually not being good to that person. So it's a really, really cool way of telling a story, and not very radio friendly when you think about it, because the lyrics are not that obvious. They're not like in your face. The choruses and the melodies are really like a punch in your face, but the lyrics are a bit cryptic, isn't it? It's not.
But yeah, it became their radio song. It became the number one, as well as another song that we're going to move on to called Big Empty. Which is another one of their sort of hits. Yeah. Now, this song featured in the movie The Crow, which I think is why it probably got a bit of its acclaim. But the thing that strikes me about this song is, for everything Interstate Love Song does, that's, how can I say this nicely? In your face. Big loud chorus, harmonies to exemplify how good the vocals are, really cool guitar work, great bass line. This is definitely an example of less is more. The band are playing a much more atmospheric, you know, way. The chorus is nice and loud, obviously, but when it drops down, when they're playing with dynamics, it's really nice and atmospheric and really brings you into the mood of the song.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's like the kind, in a certain way, the opposite of Interstate Love Song.
That's what I meant. Yeah, it's kind of whatever Interstate Love Song is showing off, Big Empty is kind of like pulling back.
And it's a great balance between acoustic and electric, in my opinion. And the slide guitar also plays a big role in that one. So the guitars maybe are my favorite part of that song. All the guitar layers, everything displayed there. And it's interesting to notice that there's two brothers who are guitarists in the band, because the bassist was actually initially a guitar player, and he played in clubs like in LA, I think in LA, or definitely in California. He played with prog rock bands, like played Rush, Yes. His background is quite diverse.
Wow.
But he was playing the bass, right? But he would also write guitar parts, I believe, with his brother. So you got two brothers who were guitar players with slightly different styles, writing stuff together. That is maybe one of the reasons why the guitar parts are so creative and they blend well together.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And another one of the iconic tracks that, again, you know, there's a few of them from this album, isn't there, that became Stone Temple Pilot hits that are still played, you know, at concerts, that are still played on radio stations, that are still put into the best of 90s rock playlists. Vaseline. And I really enjoyed this one. Really enjoyed this one. And this is the first time for me, the cryptic lyrics, they are very odd, but I love them. Again, we're going to come on to this in a bit. Stone Temple Pilots inputted a certain level of humour amongst this album. We'll touch on it a bit later, but the first time I heard it, and I'm not saying I laughed out loud when I heard the lyrics, but it just made me kind of smile a bit. Flies in your Vaseline. Like, just that lyric, so simple, but I heard it and I just kind of had a little giggle. I was like, okay, that's a little unusual, but it's a little tongue in cheek as well, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I think there's also reference to his drug use, like, but not maybe not so clear, you know. And what else about the song, man? Because I think one thing I want to say is the drum beat, because it starts with like the guitar feedback, right?
Yeah.
So that's typical from the late 60s and 70s. Hendrix would do a lot of that.
Yep.
And they certainly love Hendrix, I know that. So they had that guitar feedback for a while, and the drum beat just builds up, starts really quiet, probably not done naturally by playing, just like you go on the mixing desk and you bring it up. Mm-hmm. So you have that drum beat building up, and the song, in my opinion, the guitar riff, it's a little bit like Red Hot Chili Peppers, but heavier. So it's not that funky, because
it's a little bit like
more distorted.
It's a little bit like Can't Stop, isn't it?
Yes, it's that sort of vibe. Although this song was written before Can't Stop, it has a Red Hot Chili Peppers vibe to it. But the drums are a little bit more towards John Bonham, I would say.
Yeah.
So it is funky, but it's more, for me, it's more hard rock than funk. And it's a relentless groove that pretty much doesn't change throughout the whole song. So the drums are really driving the song here, and I think it's the best drum track in the album.
Great point.
It really is.
In terms of drum moments, it's funny because I've got iconic tracks, and I know Army Ants isn't an iconic track, but there's an iconic moment for me. The drum fill into the solo. Wow. My favorite moment of the album. Unbelievable. Just so much power. And then when the solo kicks in, it's just outrageous with all this power. And you can't help but bang your head and just shake up and down. It's brilliant, man.
Well, Loungefly, again, it's a drum-based kind of song, because it's a tribal beat played on the drums rather than cymbals, like most of the time. And it's a really, really nice vibe. Just like Vaseline, it keeps going. And it doesn't change much throughout the song. Yeah,
excellent. Yeah. Cool. Should we move on?
Yes. Okay. Any other songs you want to talk about? Or? I want to make one comment about production choice.
All I'll say quickly is lot of whatever songs I haven't mentioned in iconic songs, I've kind of scheduled them to talk about later in the next section. So I've given most songs their due.
Yeah.
Go for it. Tell us that.
Yeah, a couple of interesting. The humor in the album, right? You're talking about. I think one of my favorite bits is Silver Gun Superman. At the end, there's an overdubbed drum track playing a completely different beat. There's nothing to do with the song, and they do that kind of. The song is fading out, and that drum loop is just getting louder. It's just like mixing two tracks that have nothing to do with each other, and you can hear them laughing at the end. And it's what a good joke.
And I got a little note for that song that says almost sounds a bit progressive. And you said the bass player had a prog background, right? Yeah. So there's a little bit there. But it's funny that wasn't even. It's not like the drummer started playing it. You said they've just layered it over.
They overdubbed. It's different. But it works. You can still hear the drum beat from the song, and it's like a weird thing that's nothing to do with it.
But doesn't it work? Just a little. I know it's only 10 seconds, but it's kind of it's proggy. I'm not saying it's lovely, but it's like, oh, hold on. I could imagine someone like putting this as a section. Yeah, free jazz.
It's nice.
Lovely.
If you ever watched the Jazz Club, you got to watch the Jazz Club.
You go.
If you haven't watched it, you got to check it out.
Excellent. Do you want to introduce the next section, in the sense, because you said you had a direction you wanted to take this next section in?
Yes. So basically, I want to talk about Stone Temple Pilots versus the rest.
Yeah, and not in the sense of who's better, in the sense of what did they do differently.
It's just direction, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think most of the grunge bands were based in Seattle. Am I right?
That was the home of grunge. Yeah.
And they are in South California, if I'm not wrong. So that's the first difference there. And if you look at the picture behind me, they don't dress like the grunge guys. They're not like. I have this feeling that the grunge thing is more like, you got to look like you haven't had a shower for 2 weeks, and you got to have some clothes that you borrowed from someone. That's what I think. I'm not criticizing. I love that kind of music. I love the style as well. I love the way people dress. but it's a bit like the attitude, rock and roll. I don't give a fuck. That's how I dress.
Baggy trousers, hoodies,
And they look like you just came out of school or something. They're like,
especially that sweater that he's wearing, the yellow one.
Not saying they were, exactly. I'm not saying they're well-behaved kids, but they didn't dress like rock and roll stars, and that's one thing.
Well, There's a few. I mean, I've got 3 sections here that I want to talk about in terms of this discussion. But to go off what you've said in terms of the vibe and the feel that this band are giving off, I think in terms of the sound of the album, there is generally just a lighter, more optimistic tone through the album. Even though they're tackling issues like addiction, alienation, societal issues within, it doesn't feel dark or heavy like a Nirvana album feels.
Oh, it doesn't bring you down for sure.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't suffocate you. Listen, I love Nirvana as much as the next guy, but you can get to the end of a Nirvana album, and not just them, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, they all have this dark undertone to their music because they were tackling things like, drugs, Pearl Jam talked politics a lot. Alice in Chains often had quite sort of dark imagery in their lyrics, and you'd get to the end of an album and you'd be there like, wow, Jesus, like I got to go listen to some Michael Bublé now because it's like that's just taken me down a bit. But this is in spite of the fact, I only say that because it's December and it's almost Christmas, and Michael Bublé's come out of his cave once a year. So
and Mariah
as well,
going up the charts, man. Getting there.
But so. This definitely, although they're tackling some of the same issues lyrically, the music just on the whole feels a little bit more positive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And sorry, go on.
No, I would give credit to the riffs and grooves. That's what I believe. Sure. It's the way the songs are arranged that makes the let's say the negative feelings that present in some of the lyrics. It makes them feel a little bit. I don't know. They're not heavy. They're mild, kind of. Well, it's kind of sad, but it's groovy.
I think that there was such a seriousness around grunge, as we just discussed the last few minutes, that, as we mentioned before, the humour and the whimsical, little playful nature of this band that's probably what made the difference of this band becoming a success and not just being another one of those grunge bands that were trying to copy what Nirvana did. Because if you take a look behind me, hold on, let me do my normal thing. I'm going to close off my camera. That's the cover art. And I know it's not the full album, but they were messing around when they did this art, and I've read stuff about this, like they've got a little baby riding a dragon, and even the word purple on the album cover, it's in Chinese or Mandarin.
Right.
It's weird. It's not written purple, and it's just like they're kind of playing with the audience a bit. They're kind of having a laugh with us, and I just think when you look at how serious Nirvana and Soundgarden were, you see Stone Temple Pilots do this, and then a few years later you see Foo Fighters doing the Video Forever Long. I just see this progression of not taking it so seriously, because being serious in music is absolutely fine and it's needed. But I think Nirvana, Soundgarden and Pearl Jam were serious enough that Stone Temple Pilots said, let's do something a little different, make this a little light-hearted. And then you've got the album cover, you've got the Chinese writing, and you've got that part you said about the overlaying the drums and them having.
And how about the ending of the album? Right,
that's where I was coming to. The
hidden song,
one of my favorite moments. One of my favorite moments, bro. Yeah, I looked at that. That's a track called
My Second Album.
My Second Album by a gentleman called Richard Peterson.
I know the story.
I do know the story. Yeah, so he was.
Yeah.
Richard Peterson was this super fan of Johnny Mathis, and Johnny Mathis was like this with this jazz singer. He's got one of the Christmas songs. I think, "Do You Hear What I Hear?" I think that's Johnny Mathis. I'll put one of his songs in the playlist anyway. But yeah, this guy was like a super fan, and he followed Johnny Mathis round on tour. I know it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas is the famous Johnny Mathis one. So I'll put that in the playlist just so you guys can hear his vocals. And so this guy released a song called My Second Album, and the band loved it, and they just thought, what a brilliant way to summarize.
The story was
on,
like I think it was Dean DeLeo. He was doing an interview in a radio station in Washington, a small town. And he saw this picture of the singer, right, alongside the Mathis, the famous singer. It was like, who's that guy? He's a guy. He's like a local guy here, and he's got his second album out. Is great, and this and that. And then he got a tape of that album and showed it to the band, and it was like, this is brilliant. It's like brilliant stuff. And they started to listen to it before gigs, and it became their like inner joke, and like they loved it. They loved the album apparently, and they said, we're going to stick the first song of the album is My Second Album. And the interesting thing is, so they releasing their second album with 11 songs, but if you add that one to the list, so it's 12 songs, and the song. My second album says it's like 12 beautiful pieces of music, whatever
12 precious melodies, 12 gracious melodies. So good.
Imagine starting your album saying, look, I've written 12 gracious melodies. You're just like, you're about to listen to the best thing that's out there
12 great tunes playing on your stereo, and the key lyric, this album cover looks similar like Johnny Mathis. For Mathis lovers, this album has his style. This is outrageous, Felipe, because this band have nothing to do with Johnny Mathis. I was going to say drugs. Why did I say drugs? Jazz or Richard Peterson.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they've taken this song because they loved it, because it kind of exemplified the process they'd been through for recording their second album. They just thought, fuck it, why not? We'll put it in at the end of our album. And it just works so well. And it just... in an album full of lyrics, like we said, that deal with addiction, alienation, some depressing issues, to end it on a high like this, I thought was a genius move.
It's just brilliant. But if that song can't cheer you up, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just hilarious the way they put it in the album. Yeah, and it's just it comes out of nowhere at the end. They're like, "What the hell is this?"
So good.
It's clearly not them, that but straight away. But knowing the story just makes it even funnier.
Yeah, excellent. So now let's talk about the music comparisons between Stone Temple Pilots and the other grunge acts. So you touched on it earlier. I'm just going to sort of summarize my thoughts on it now. Genre blending, and as we said earlier, they it's not apart from My Second Album, they don't do a song in another genre. They just sprinkle little bits on. And I think compared to their first album, which was just kind of like an out-and-out grunge album, you're getting a lot of diversity and a lot of different styles bleeding into their overall grunge base. Psychedelic rock, you've got quite a hazy atmosphere where they use dynamics and to create ambience and sort of feelings of, mysticism. Songs like Pretty Penny and the intro of Army Ants, I think, exemplify that really well. Classic rock, and what I mean by this is your standard classic rock song. We've obviously done an episode, one of our first ever episodes of what is classic rock. Go back and listen to that. I think that's episode 8 and 9, maybe. We did a two-parter. I think driving drums, simple riffs, power chords, nothing crazy, good old rock. And I think you hear that in Unglued and Kitchenware and Candy Bars. You've also got, as you mentioned earlier, the little blues influence with slide guitar, acoustic guitar.
The guitar solos in general, because it's like, if you listen to Guns N' Roses, like Slash always does like a composition for his solos.
Yeah.
And in this album, I think it sounds like it's improvised, even if it's not. It sounds like a blues solo.
You're absolutely right. And I hear that in songs like Pretty Penny and Big Empty. Just that, the acousticness of it, the southern feel that you get to it. Funk, you've already mentioned, syncopated upbeat rhythms, which I hear in Vaseline and Interstate Love Song. But already, elements of post-grunge, where you're hearing the easygoing rock music, like the chorus of Still Remains. I think it's like Foo Fighters. It really reminds me of that.
Good point.
And then the verse of Still Remains, almost, well, maybe this is due to Scott Weiland's vocals, but it's almost like country.
Good point.
Just that, do you know the part I mean?
Yeah.
The verse,
really
just the verse of Still Remains. I don't hear country anywhere else on the album, but just that Still Remains verse.
Well, one thing about country music is like loads of country songwriters, they don't take themselves very seriously. There's a lot of humor in their songs. So
well, there you go. That links again. And yeah, so just in general, in terms of actual songwriting, Purple emphasizes melody over heaviness, and I think that's the key difference. Apart from obviously all those styles I just mentioned, Nirvana, I don't think Nirvana ever put any funk in their music. I don't think Soundgarden ever put any sort of blues. Well, actually, that's not true. That's another conversation for another day, Soundgarden and blues. But generally, Purple emphasizes melody over heaviness, and whilst Nirvana might have been focusing on raw production, dissonant, I think of the song Negative Creep by Nirvana, which is it's akin to heavy metal. And I hear that, and I think, God, Stone Temple Pilots is so far away from that, but obviously still being in the same bracket. Yeah. We get a lot of melody, we got more rhythm, more groove. Listen to songs like Unglued and Vaseline. Catchy, rhythmic riffs that differ from the sludgier, less dynamic heaviness of the other bands.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the whole vibe is different in many ways. Like the song you've mentioned, Pretty Penny, that song is completely different from the rest of the album. And let alone the genre, right?
Yeah.
So it's different from the album. It's 100% acoustic, like huge contrast between verse and chorus. So they were actually trying to do something really new, really different. And I think if you listen to their song "Creep" from Core, you could say that even the vocals they sound a lot like Nirvana. That song. Right, even the vocals, the vibe, the groove, everything.
Okay.
Maybe Plush could have been. I might be stretching a little bit here because I'm not a specialist in grunge, but it could have been a Soundgarden song, could have been a Pearl Jam song, right? But no songs in this album could have been written or sound anything like the other grunge bands. That's what I believe. If you're listening to Plush, that song could be played by any of the bands in the 90s.
I just listened to 5 seconds of it, and that's Pearl Jam. The vocals very much the
and
the clarity.
The vocals are a lot like Kurt Cobain, like a lot of it.
The vocals, and this, I'm not at all. We're not comparing the talents here. When I say the vocals on this album feel much more varied than Chris Cornell, Kurt Cobain, or Eddie Vedder. It's not a slight on the others. It's just saying, like I said, I hear that when he sings like this in the country song, like in Still Remains, like that. I know I'm over exaggerating, but you get country in the Still Remains verse, and then throughout the other songs, you've got different elements. He's kind of mellow and soulful in the softer songs, but then when he needs to bring it for the harder rock songs, you hear the projection in his voice, and so it's like he's just covering loads of bases.
It sounds to me like a man going through constant change. His outfits, his persona. And then the vocals there, but changing from one song to another or from the verse to the chorus, that's a skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
He changes vocal style inside the same song. It's brilliant, really.
Yeah.
Unlike any of the other singers you've mentioned, who are all really good singers.
But it doesn't it just feel that his versatility, along with everything else we've mentioned today in this episode so far, just kind of gave grunge the push to kind of be a little bit more accessible, isn't it? Brilliant.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have anything else about this section, or do you want to move on to the legacy of the album?
Let's talk about the legacy,
Cool,
sure.
All right. Well, the album debuted straight away at #1 on the Billboard and stayed there for 3 weeks, which is massive, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Bad Motorfinger came out in '94 as well, and that was a massive... Oh, no, that was '91. I think Super Unknown is the... Soundgarden one that came later, and that was 1994. So to compete with that and other, big albums that were coming out at that time that was still grunge through and through, I think it did a massive job to do that. Critics who criticised the first album started to come around and recognise Stone Temple Pilots as probably recognise their place in grunge for the same reason we're doing now, as the band that now grunge has had its heyday, now grunge has peaked. Let's see where we can take this. And I think critics started looking at Stone Temple Pilots and saying, actually, you guys are onto something here. It went on to achieve multi-platinum status and is a defining album of the 90s, showcasing creative possibilities within grunge and moving it to the post-grunge era that we became so familiar with in the later of the 90s. The iconic songs that we mentioned have endured over the decades. We hear them still daily on rock radios, best of 90s playlists, and they're great songs.
Yeah, they're great songs. They're great
Yeah.
songs. And I would say that Interstate Love Song is probably one of the best songs of the 90s. I would say that.
That's a fair shout.
Just said
I
it.
think yeah.
Just said it.
There you go. Why the hell not? Awesome. Anything else about the reception, impact, and legacy of the album?
No.
Excellent. Well, do you know what? I'll just say 2 or 3 words before you do your monologue. Yeah. I really enjoyed the album, man. And it's funny because this kind of music, I know we're still 10 years or 5 or 6 years away from pop rock at this stage, but I don't really listen to this kind of music. Mm-hmm. And if I was in the car and someone said, what do you want to listen to? I wouldn't say Purple by Stone Temple Pilots. You know me, I've got a bunch of other albums I'd rather listen to. But listen after listen, so I listened to it I think 5 times. Each song really does grow on you, and it is because it has those little psychedelic elements in there. Because although you get the first 3 songs, which are essentially they are grunge songs, although as we've said they sprinkle little bits here and there.
The songwriting, kind of, but then not the way they arranged it.
Exactly, yeah. But then when song 4 comes in, I think that's the right one. It just changes up. Yeah, well, Interstate Love Song is song 4. So from when Interstate Love Song comes on. And then you get Still Remains after that, which has a little the weird country stuff that I said. And then after that you get Pretty Penny, which is that's the one that's completely acoustic.
Like the Beatles psychedelic one.
It just gets your interest because you think you're going in a certain direction with the first 3 songs, and then suddenly, song after song after song, you get something new. And having listened to this album 5 times over the last week, I've been sat there going, "This is a bloody good album." It deserves its credit, man. Like I said, it might not be my favorite all time, and I don't love it. I think it's really good, but my God, it deserves its place in the grunge annals, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably my favorite because it's not a style that I listen to very often. It's not, again, I like it. Some good stuff in there. It's just not my cup of tea in many ways. And it's the same like when we're talking about Britpop. I'm not a Britpop fan, but there's so many good albums and good songs that were recorded by those bands. So I think with music, with rock music especially, we've got to understand that rock is not meant to be predictable. It's not meant to be always the same, and you never know what you're going to get. So I don't think I try not to have any sort of prejudice against any subgenre of rock because you never know what you're going to get. This album, if you don't listen to grunge, you still should give this album a go because it's
100%.
Yeah, it's different. It's something else.
Excellent, cool. Do you want to finish us off with your monologue?
Yeah, well, I want to wrap it up.
Go for it.
I need to give you my terms and conditions. It's really simple. My disclaimer at the beginning. So if there's any English mistakes, forgive my English, and if there's any swearing, forgive my French.
The swearing, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry about the swearing, but also, bro, don't worry about your English mistakes, man.
It's fine with the monologue, Felipe's monologue. Here we go. Purple is not the predictable rock album from the 90s. After a solid debut with Core, the Stone Temple Pilots were loved by their followers, but still hated by the mainstream rock media. Geographically and musically distant from their grunge peers, they've refused to go with the flow and release another album like Core. Instead, they've mixed all their musical influences into a style of their own, including psychedelic rock, classic rock, punk, pop. And if you pay close attention to it, you might even find some jazz, prog rock, and bossa nova. Scott Weiland's melodies and lyrics translate his frustration with his own erratic behavior into a melancholic form of poetry that doesn't necessarily bring sadness to the listener, maybe thanks to the energetic grooves and riffs that keep coming song after song. And when you think you've heard everything from them, acoustic guitars and percussion take over and change the mood of the album. Even if you don't like grunge or 90s rock in general, Purple can surprise you with its incredible collection of great melodies and riffs, a truly unique product of the 90s.
Bro, the best thing for me personally and selfishly was bringing the monologue onto the episodes because I get to, I get to put all my thoughts into one paragraph.
Yeah.
The best thing for the show was getting you doing monologues as well because you articulated that amazingly, bro, and that was so perfect. Yeah, amazing, man, beautifully.
It's just trying to convince people to listen to the stuff that we listen to, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And we're
not even making any money out of you listening to those albums, right? we don't have songwriting credits of that.
Yeah, you're right. We're trying to sell it to people, like, oh, you know.
Yeah, go listen. Give them some money.
Yeah,
they deserve my money. You know. They should deserve yours. Yeah, really cool stuff.
Cool. Yeah, excellent stuff. Well, thank you for joining us again for another Long Live Rock and Roll podcast episode. Next week, we're going to do a really fun episode. I'm not going to spoil it now. You'll have to see it on the day. But then we're going to take a little break for a few weeks for Christmas. He doesn't even know. Well, you do, but you forget things. So I'll tell you once we've finished recording. Last episode next week before we take a little break for Christmas. And we should be back around mid-January. So that we can take a little break and enjoy some time with our family over the holidays. But yeah, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. Once again, thanks for all the support. Thanks for listening to us. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
And as usual, guys, take care and long live rock and roll.